Your phone is face down on the table, the screen is dark, nothing has buzzed, no light has flashed, and still your hand moves toward it. You don't decide to check it, you just do. By the time you notice your thumb swiping the screen, the swipe has already happened. You tell yourself it's a bad habit, a lapse in discipline, something wrong with you, specifically in this exact decade. Researchers who study smartphone behavior have found the same pattern in almost everyone they study. People check far more often than they realize and far more often than they intend to. This isn't a personal failing, it's something deeper. But the real answer is far stranger than discipline. This isn't about willpower. It isn't really about phones either. What just moved your thumb is a survival circuit at least 2 million years old. And it has nothing to do with software. It's a hunting strategy. Until about 200 years ago, it's what kept your ancestors alive. Picture a woman walking through dry grassland in what is now East Africa, sometime in the deep past. She isn't following a map. She isn't checking a clock. She's running a calculation her brain has performed 1,000 times before. Is this patch still worth it, or is it time to move on? That calculation, more or less, is exactly what's pulling you back to your phone right now. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes spent years among the Hadza, a hunter-gatherer community in Tanzania, studying exactly how foragers make this decision. She followed women searching for tubers and berries, patch by patch, watching how long they stayed before moving on, and what made them finally walk away. What she documented wasn't randomness. It was a rule, written into behavior long before anyone could put it into words. Watch a forager from a distance for an afternoon, and it can look almost like wandering, an aimless drift between bushes and shade. It isn't. Every pause, every change in direction is a decision made in less than a second, balancing a budget of calories and daylight that can never be spent twice. The rule works like this. While you're gathering from one patch, the easy pickings go first. The largest berries, the shallow roots. As time passes, what's left gets smaller and harder to find. Every extra minute spent searching a thinning patch is a minute not spent finding a fuller one somewhere else. At some point, the effort of staying outweighs the reward of leaving, and your ancestors' brains were built to sense that crossover point and act on it automatically without a single conscious thought. Get this wrong too often, and the cost wasn't abstract. It was hunger. It was wasted daylight in a landscape with predators in it. So the brain that survived was the brain that read the signal early and moved. Scientists eventually gave this rule a name, the marginal value theorem. It sounds technical. It isn't. It simply means leave when the reward rate here drops below the reward rate somewhere else. Simple, elegant, and old enough to predate language itself. Bees use a version of it. Wolves use a version of it. Every forager that has ever existed runs some version of this same quiet arithmetic. None of this ever needed to reach conscious thought, and that was the point. A forager who stopped to consciously calculate berry density and walking distance would burn precious time doing math instead of doing the foraging. So evolution did something more efficient. It pushed the entire calculation underground into something that doesn't feel like a calculation at all. A flicker of restlessness, a pull toward the next patch, an itch you act on before you've even named it. Now hold that idea and look at your phone again. Every app on it is a patch. Every feed is a forest. Email is one patch. The group chat is another. The news app is a third. And your brain rotates between them exactly the way a forager rotates between berry bushes, checking, patch by patch, whether this one is still worth staying in. But here's where the story splits in two. Real berry bushes run out. Real patches get picked clean, and the forager has no choice but to move on and eventually rest. Your phone never does either of those things. That's the first crack. The second one runs even deeper into the chemistry of anticipation itself. What is your brain actually chasing in the half second before the screen lights up? In the 1990s, neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz ran an experiment on monkeys that quietly rewrote what scientists understood about reward. He expected dopamine, the brain's chemical messenger tied to motivation, to spike when the monkeys received a squirt of juice. At first, it did. But as the monkeys learned to predict the reward, something strange happened. The dopamine spike stopped tracking the juice. It started tracking the cue that came before it. Then Schultz changed the rules. He made the reward unpredictable, sometimes arriving, sometimes not. The dopamine response didn't,